Create, awakening the passion within you. Hello everyone and welcome to the show. This is Create. Create your life. Create maybe an art life or maybe just find your life purpose. Whatever it is, we are on episode 29 and this is Franz, Sidney. I am your host and today we are going to talk about something that is really important in this very gloomy, cold January, at least here in the UK. We have snow on the ground, so not really the best time to go outside and enjoy ourselves. Of course, we are also in lockdown and we have a lot of screaming news outlets talking about death and disease, and it can be quite traumatizing and quite scary for most of us to know we are in the middle of a never-ending pandemic, plus all the things that are connected to that, the restrictions and everything. So in this episode, I decided to talk about pain and using art as a painkiller. So if you're interested in feeling better, if you have issues with depression, OCD, being worried, anxiety, or just chronic pain, just keep listening because this episode is for you. Or maybe this episode is for a friend that you have who is feeling very low and you would like to help this person. So today we're really going to talk about how the strongest painkiller we have sometimes is really art. And I mean art in the very, very wide and broad ramification of this term, because art means acting, but also baking a beautiful decorated cake. It means painting, but also making a beautiful knitted item from the house, or recycling something and making it to something nice and new and beautiful to look at, making a table that looks so essential, so beautiful, and it will stand for many years. So art is the expression of human beings in their highest form, really, and music and everything else that comes with. So don't be restricted and think only about drawing, okay? So one of the stories I was reading recently is it's a very unreadable name, so I don't know how to pronounce it, but somebody called Ophir Hirsch, and please forgive me if I did not pronounce this correctly. I'm Italian, so I have no idea about any other country and how you pronounce names. This person called Ophir was talking about all his experiences regarding art, and he's been painting for 24 years, which is longer than anyone else I know, including myself. But he was saying he's very overwhelmed by the knowledge that there is a huge physical effect that the action of painting has on the human body. He was telling his story that he was in the military service for many years. He was a paratrooper, and he used to have back pain all the time. And then after that, he was doing diving, and he's done that for about 10 years. And this meant that he was always wearing a weight belt. And of course, his backache went worse. And sometimes he couldn't even stand up straight because it was so painful. So this back pain was a chronic thing in his life. But there's a point when he realized that when he was painting, he would just forget about the back pain. And like many other people, sometimes he had maybe a headache. But sometimes when he had a very bad migraine, he would have all the standard painkillers, and they were not working. But if he started to paint very intensively, the pain would just disappear. And so he was asking this question, what sort of drug is painting? To myself, what is this mechanism that is happening in my body that makes the pain go away? And it was quite a good question. I've been thinking about it because I said in the past, when we are doing art, whether we are competitively good or not, we just get really busy with our brain. We don't really pay attention to much else, and the time goes away. So this guy called Ophir was making a comment that in our society we're very competitive, we're very critical, we are always ready to put down other people when they make an attempt to do something, and we can tell them very quickly they're not good enough, and this may completely shatter them. But the purpose here, when you're doing art as a painkiller, it's different. So when this guy has somebody around him complaining about having chronic pain, he just automatically recommends, please start painting. And every time he says so, in most cases, let's say, the answer he gets is, well, I don't know how to paint, or I'm not very good at it, or whatever I do, when I paint, it comes out ugly. And so then he had to spend the time, like I do all the time, to explain that painting is not about something pretty, something ugly, but about taking your guts out. You are cleansing your soul. That's quite a thing, isn't it? He has learned this, and he's got the back pain. He knows what a migraine is. I don't know what it is, but he knows, and he's saying that it really helps. So what happens here is this, we have a perception that we receive from when we go to school, we have peers, we have parents and educators telling us what we are expected to do. And then there are societal expectations, and it's very difficult to change those. So we always think, well, I can't do this, I'm not good enough. So we never embrace in anything artistic. But art is a gift that we have. It's not something that we have to win at. It's not a race. And this guy been very optimistic. He said, well, I have challenges and I managed to overcome those using art. I'm not saying I'm the best painter in the world, but it really helps me. And I want to be an active contributor to this change of perception of what art is in society and the benefits of painting. And I really applaud his efforts, and the one that is also made by a lot of other people who are trying to bring art to the people in a way that is more affordable, emotionally speaking, right? So then in the way that we can just enjoy it as it is without all these high expectations. So doing something beautiful. So I don't know about you, but I get really inspired when I read the people who are in pain manage to lower this threshold to feel better. I remember quoting about coloring books in the past. And I read another very interesting story. This is more recent, and it's from an artist who weaned herself of painkillers while the lockdown was going on. And what was going on? Basically, this was a woman called Emma, and then she was a pastel painter. She has a very painful genetic condition that is affecting her joints, and she spent years in bed in agony, completely numb with all these painkillers. But then she decided to wean herself of the drugs last November, so in 2020, I think, and she began to paint. And what happened is she was just fed up of having spent so many years in bed watching television, which she said it wasn't a life. And she was really inspired by the lakes, the landscapes around her. And when she came off the medication, she suddenly felt alive. She saw the beauty around her. She saw the color around her. And she couldn't go to these places because she wasn't a very mobile person. So she asked the photographers that were going there, can I paint your photos? And they gave her a really positive response, and she was pleased to be able to paint. And eventually she became very confident about her painting, and she started to sell those pictures that she had made, and to even do, how do you call that, crowdfunding, right? And to just help maybe the NHS or whichever charity was her favorite at the moment. And so in this article, which I read in a local newspaper, she was saying that art therapy can really help those who are suffering from pain, or even from a mental health condition, or from a drug or alcohol addiction. And there are lots of things that maybe she didn't want to mention directly because she's not maybe a mental health professional, but you can just see how a person who has those conditions needs sometimes some relief, and art can be useful in that direction. And this lady, remember, the name was Emma, right? She has heart and lung problems, so she has been self-isolating for so many months. But even so, she used the self-isolation period to hold live workshops, probably on Facebook, I don't know, on some social media, on Zoom, and she helped people who wanted to do art to paint with her. So she shared her tips, she shared techniques. They were together doing this, and she really said that art takes away your mind from the pain, from the worry, and it does help easing depression, even if you do just an hour a week. And her student, they were able to escape this heaviness of all the things that they were dealing with. And so she was very glad that she was joined by a lot of people around the entire country, and they were sending her the art. So there was all this collaboration, this sharing, and that made everyone happy. So, of course, in her position, because she's self-isolating, she cannot go out and volunteer, she cannot do practical things like everyone else, but that's her way of giving back. Think about it, she's the one that is ill, but she's trying to give back. She's trying to, do her part and to lift herself up, because, it's also sometimes up to ourselves to trying to do something that works and is better than just maybe getting drunk or shout to people, because that's not really helpful. But if we're trying to listen to music or make music or whatever, she was saying, that is so good, and mental health cannot be overlooked. She even auctioned 4 of her paintings, and she raised something like £700 to fund for some personal protective equipment for people in Cumbria, where she is from. So, I think if she's done it, we can all do something like that. We can all find some time to just get our mind off the terrible news and everything that's going on, and just do something else and different that takes our mind really off the pain, off the worry for just a few minutes, and then it might become a really good and welcome addiction. Now, for those of you who are very analytically minded and want proof of everything, there is something in the Harvard Health Letter, and it's an article from about 10 years ago. It's called Fool Your Brain, Reduce Your Pain. And the subtitle is, the next time you're looking for pain relief, try a little distraction. And I thought, oh wow, we have something very much scientific based, and let's have a look. And they were really just quoting from a study that was published in the Current Biology. And this study found that mental distractions block pain signals from the body before they actually reach the brain. And these were the words from Dr. Randy Golub, who is associate professor in psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. And what the professor said is, human brains have a very limited capacity for attention. That's why we all jump from one another, right? When we go to a conversation on the internet, we jump from one side to the other, because we cannot have attention for very, very long. So he continues, if you have a demanding enough task, you will have a less attention to give to your pain. And that's quite a thing, isn't it? It has to be demanding enough to have enough attention. So this is really about focus. And remember what we talked about in the past, you get what you focus on, always. So the researchers in the study found that if you challenge the participants with memory games, you're not just diverting their conscious attention from the pain message that comes from your body, but the distraction apparently has released those natural painkillers that are able to block the pain that is coming and the signal. So as the signals enter the spinal cord, then the distraction stops the signal coming in. That's amazing. I mean, I was like, wow, we have an amazing brain. But that doesn't mean that we all have to play memory games to get this effect. In fact, Dr. Golub says that you can use just about anything that brings you great pleasure. And so you have to think about any experience that you've done in the past that you find very meaningful, very pleasurable, that you like doing again. And then he said, there was a moment when you were distracted because you were doing just that and the time just went. So use that. And for example, he was saying some people just enjoy having a visit from your grandchildren or watching a favorite program on television. And while they do that, they kind of go into a state of relaxation that is amazing and is getting their attention high. And somehow the pain goes down. It's just one of the miracles. And I remember quoting this maybe a few months ago, one of my earliest episodes. I remember there was a guy that was waiting in a hospital for his x-rays, and he was in a lot of pain. He probably had a broken rib. And one of the volunteers here in Norfolk, A&E, was assigned to talk to him, and they went and chatted for a little while. It turned out that the guy was a person who had served, I think, in the RAF during the war. He was quite elderly, and during the chat, the pain just went away. It was half an hour chatting, then he was taken to have his x-rays, and he said, well, the pain is just gone because he was so distracted. How amazing is that? So in conclusion, still talking about what Dr. Golub said, he said you don't have to limit your distractions to just one activity. He said basically use your brain to do more things that are very rewarding, and this will tip the balance away from the negative aspect. And the point is that you don't want to live your pain all the time. You want to live your life. So just do as much as you can, and the brain will take care of the rest. And I'm going to talk about a little bit more of a pain story. A woman that had a real painful experience when the episodes started to happen in the beginning of 2020. And she was in a very large American city. And suddenly this epidemic started, and she could feel the panic. She could feel the big feeling of being scared, and she feels everything very intensely because she was in her 30s and autistic, and she also had depression, anxiety, and OCD issues, and she was living in this tiny flat, and suddenly she was sensing panic from everyone, and her life changed. Her routine from one day to the other just basically disappeared. And that must be a terrible thing for anyone, not only for people who have autism, but she lost her job, she lost her income, she was stuck into this tiny place, she lost her support group, and all the entire support system that she has as an autistic person was just gone. And so she noted that her OCD went crazy. She was washing her hands hundreds of times until the flesh would peel off because, the germs, and then she was cleaning everything with toxic amount of bleach. It was really dark time for her, and it went worse. She had meltdown, she had self-harming, getting to the point of really beating herself, and she really suffered because she was so isolated, she was so depressed, she was lonely, she felt like hopeless. And in her words, she said this is the type of isolation that can kill, because her life had been shattered. Everything was shattered into a million broken pieces. And so she reached the point where she started to plan how to end her life, which is very sadly what happens when you do all these mitigation things to help so we don't get COVID, but you're forgetting that to save 1% of people, you're damaging 99%. And this is one of the victims. She was there. She was unable to get help because, of course, she couldn't because everything was closed. So are we thinking about these patients who are in the mental health department, of our thoughts, and they need this help? But let's read her story. She said, as I looked over the fire escape, searching for a place that could secure a hanging rope, I stepped back and had the strange idea to draw how I felt. Now, I wondered where that idea came from. I like to think that this spark of creativity came from up above, maybe from the spirit world around her, because this was there just to lend a hand. We're just going to take you out of this condition. We're going to keep you afloat. We're not going to heal you completely, but we're going to give you a hand, because nobody else can. I was really touched when I read this, that suddenly I had a strange idea to draw how I felt. I think it was beautiful. She continued to say that she had not drawn or painted since she was a child, so, 20 years. And she picked up his pencil, and she suddenly felt that all her feelings were flowing out onto a sheet of paper. I mean, that feelings cannot flow. Feelings are an electric thing inside our brain, right? Now she felt them flowing out. I love this very visual idea of what was actually going on. And her feelings were translating better on paper than on words. She couldn't say any word that could tell things better. And so what she was feeling was that her artwork was an extension of herself. Isn't that true for all of us? The artwork doesn't matter if it's beautiful or not. If it's music or drawing or 3D, it's an expression. So this is where art becomes your language, becomes your way of expressing who you are, how you're feeling, and you can scream into the world when you are at your lowest. Now this lady drew only about things that she could focus on. At the moment, it was only about COVID-19. It was only about isolation, because everything around her was about COVID-19, and she spent most day watching the news, which, looking back, in my opinion, was not such a great idea, because in the news you have all this catastrophe and big headlines because they have to sell, they have advertising, they have things to do, but they're not really giving much advice on how to be positive, how to be healthy, and there are therapies. God forbid if you talk about therapies, you are a conspiracy theorist, but actually there are therapists. So why don't we talk about them? Why don't we give people hope that we can get over this, that we can do something? There is a mental health, there is physical health, we can do more to feel great. And instead we only talk about the dead people. Of course, that is not going to help anyone, because you get what you focus on. So if you are feeling dreadful after watching the news twice a day, stop watching the news twice a day. Maybe just stop it altogether. It really made a point to me, and I felt so sorry that she could only think about watching the news. But there is something that happens there. She not only is getting worried by watching the news all the time. When she goes out now, she's having a panic attack. And so this is even worse, because her anxiety is going up and up. And she would also endure a sensory hell, because of course in her condition that's very difficult. And she would wear a mask, but every time she did, she felt a horrible pain, and the mask would literally hurt her skin. She felt like she was suffocating, and breathing became immensely difficult. I relate, because I can't breathe with the mask. It's like impossible. But, at that point, she started to paint. She moved on from pencils to acrylics. Then she moved to oils. Then she started to learn watercolors. And she found out that over and over, this was not just a one-day thing. She could express her feelings much better with paint than with pencil, because you can mix the paint, you can smudge, you can fade, you can smell the paint, and you can express those emotions. And that was very good for her. And also, it was quite good to cover the mistakes. It just go on top of it. You don't have to have a perfect steady hand, and you don't have to color within the line. And she always thought she was very bad at art when she was a kid, but she had learned during this terrible lockdown that art is not about coloring inside the lines. Not for her. Art was about expression, expressing what she felt and how she perceived the world around her. And so I wanted to learn from her, because she said when she was starting to paint or draw, she had no outlines, she had no plan, she had no expectation. She was just playing with it. And her feelings started to take the lead. I think that's very important for us, whether we're creative or not, to understand it is about the feelings coming out, about experimentation. And she knew that if she would mess up, she could just continue, turn the work into something completely different. And she would show her emotion using those bright reds and blues, that strong emotions can be conveyed in easily. And then to emphasize the darkness that she had in her life, she was using blacks and she was using grays. And these are dark colors that evoke the darkness of your mind. And then she would splatter the paint, and then when she was splattering the paint, she experienced a wide range of emotion. Just as the paint was hitting the canvas, she could feel something else. And it's very important to read this sentence from her, as that all else was falling apart and people were dying. My art had become everything to me. So there is the cathartic moment, the cleansing moment that we all want when we tackle art for whatever reason and angle in our life, whether it's for a profession, a hobby, or just to feel a little bit better. Because she then moved on and felt better, and despite thinking that her work was actually looking quite terrible, she decided to share it on Instagram, and she got a lot of attention from her friends, from the media, and even people who said, wow, we want to buy your paint. And in fact, one of her friends used one of her paintings in an anthropology lecture in New York, and that she was giving to the undergrads. And so that was amazing that she could touch people with her just way of expressing her own feelings. So although her mental health wasn't intact, wasn't perfect, she was able to channel her emotional pain into painting. And I think that's very important. Can you see that? Can you see that art is a gift to us? It was never meant to be something to compete with, something to put people down with or to feel bad about. It's more like a gentle reminder that we as humans have an inner need to be soothed, to be calm, to just be, to float in this consciousness that is not a consciousness, and to be aware of how we are feeling. And when the language to express this is not there, because maybe we are alone or we can't talk about it, or we feel very sad about it, that's when art fills the gap and allows us to reconnect to ourselves and to the others. And in this way, we reconnect to the whole universe. In the words of this young lady, remember she's only 30, people often forget that loneliness and panic are not good for your health, and mental health can hurt you physically or even can kill you. She had to really think of what to do about that, and so she had to do her best to not let that happen. And so she said, I had no choice but to continue my art. Now that she's feeling better, all that she does is painting, and all her passions are slowly returning back to her life. And she's now thinking about maybe an online art degree, how her life is changing. And although she is still affected by the pandemic, she's still traumatized, she's still unable to do many things like all of us. She's not trying to kill herself anymore, she's not doing self-harming as much anymore. Everything is toned down, is calmed down. And, she makes the point that not all autistic people are upset by the loss of routine. Some people like being alone. But I guess that all of us miss the small things in life that made it worth living. All of us have a measure of mental health capacity that can go up and down in this lockdown. And this lady, her name actually was Amanda. She was hoping that maybe her story could touch one person that would make her happy. But I think that her story has helped not only herself, just the fact of putting into writing, but has helped many other people who read it, because it shows how you can cope with tremendous stress. And it is very important for those who were already affected by mental issues before the pandemic. So, in conclusion, if you are feeling anxious or in pain, if you are worried, you're lonely, you're depressed, there is still hope. You can start today a new hobby, a new interest. Maybe you pick up your art supplies that you haven't touched for many years. Maybe you start writing a few words. Let's call it poetry, but it doesn't have to be as beautiful. It's just what comes out of your heart. Maybe you pick up an old t-shirt, you were going to donate it, write on it, do something, put your message on it. Or you can listen to some music, dance to it, or write how you feel about it, or sing to it, or you can add your own lyrics. Or you can look around in your home. You can recycle something. You can pick up an object and turn it into something pretty, something useful. or you can donate it once you've worked on it. There is something that we all can do to take the mind off the pain, the searing pain of being lonely, isolated, and sometimes in physical pain. You could even learn a few verses from a poet, maybe a scripture, a song, and do something with them. Maybe you can pick up these verses, you can write them in good handwriting, or maybe you can tap them and shred them into pieces. Who knows what you want to do, but you can take your focus off the pain. With diversification techniques, with distraction techniques, you can find some small solutions for everyday living. You can choose to focus on something else by distracting yourself all the time. And as you do that, you will find that many more people, just like you, are alone. Many people are in pain. Many people are worried. So you were never alone in this to begin with. So if you think that this was useful, share your feelings, share your emotions, share your art, because it's never been about being perfect. It's always been about being human. So this is all I have to say for today. Just my hope and pray that we can all find light in the end of this tunnel and help one another, be kind to one another, and share what we're doing, because we can be strong, we can fight this, we can win this. We need more light, we need more positivity. So share positive messages, positive art to make people feel better, because we really need this. So thank you very much for being with me in this episode. That was episode 29. If you feel that your mental health needs a little bit of help now because you're feeling with a little bit of lack of direction, or maybe you just keep going in circles and you have all these blocks in all sides and you're not progressing, come to me. You can go to franzsidney.com or to Franz Sidney Therapy on Facebook and contact me on my email or on the podcast or wherever you like to ask me for a free consultation to find out about how I can help you using hypnosis and rapid transformational therapy or coaching or even art therapy, because everything together can work towards your happiness. So if you find this episode helpful, please feel free to click, share, subscribe, and tell your friends about it so that more people can find use in art in all the wide scope of the meaning of the word, and more people can feel better. So thank you again for being with me, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye. You have listened to Creating the Life of Your Dreams with Franz Sidney.